Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Baltimore's Infrastructure Summit. I know some of you are still getting seated. Wanted to start with some thank yous and welcomes. Thank you to Mayor Brandon Scott for his leadership and City Administrator Leach. Thank you to our speakers, panelists, our moderators for bringing urgency and depth to this conversation. And of course, to our city staff, our county partners, state partners that are here, labor reps, businesses, community stakeholders, thank you for your continued engagement. We're also honored to recognize Secretary Wiedefeld from the Maryland Department of Transportation, Senator Hayes, Washington, McCray, and Attar, as well as Delegate Phillips, and I think I saw Delegate Stinnett. Additionally, we have representatives from Senator Alsobrooks, Senator Van Hollen's office, and Congressman Olszewski's office. Later today, I didn't see her here yet, but the Deputy Secretary of the Maryland State Department of General Services and former Baltimore City Cabinet member Chichi Nagaya-Nash. Comptroller Henry, thank you for attending. And to members of the City Council and all the distinguished guests, thank you. And a special thank you from our sponsors, the Baltimore DC Metro Building Trades Council, Care First, Kumi Construction, Whiting Turner, Johns Hopkins, and Ari Harrington and Sons. And now to kick things off and to help set the tone for the day, join us in welcoming Chief Administrative Officer Faith Leach.
All right, good morning, everyone. Okay, I need a little bit more energy. This is the first annual Baltimore City Infrastructure Summit. Can I get a little bit more energy? Good morning, Baltimore. All right, I hear a little bit of excitement in the room. How many folks here are excited to talk about the future of infrastructure in the city of Baltimore? Let me see some hands. Well, that is what today is all about. It is about bringing together our partners across the city, across the region, from the private sector to the government sector, state and federal partners together to talk about how we can build a better Baltimore. We know our city has some of the oldest infrastructure in the country, but what we see is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to train our workforce and to train our residents for the billions of dollars in infrastructure projects that are happening right here in the city of Baltimore. So again, I am so very excited about today. I'm excited about the conversations that will take place. And I'm excited about the connections. We have city directors and deputy mayors and leaders from across all of our industries that are going to be working together and having conversations about how we can invest in the future of the city of Baltimore. And I, for one, am very, very excited about all the work that's going to take place. I'm extremely excited about the opportunity to spend some time talking about how we build our workforce in the city of Baltimore. We know that there are thousands of good paying jobs in infrastructure industries across the city of Baltimore. And we want to make sure that our residents are the first up to be connected with those opportunities. And so we're going to talk today about how we build stronger career pathways. We're going to talk a little bit about how we enhance our project delivery systems in the city of Baltimore. We're investing millions of dollars. We increased our borrowing capacity so that we could build more in the city of Baltimore. But we know we have to streamline and improve our project delivery mechanisms. And so we'll be talking about that today. We'll be talking about transportation. We'll be talking about how we can fortify and enhance the city's transportation system, not just the cities, but the regions. And so I, for one, am so very excited about all of the work that will happen here today, about the connections that we will make, and about the impact that will result from our time here together today. So again, thank you so much for joining the first annual Baltimore City Infrastructure Summit. And now I have the pleasure of bringing up the Maryland Secretary of Transportation, Paul Wiedefeld.
Good morning again. How's everyone doing here? Good. I did want to recognize the group over here on the far right. These are our future employers and employees. They're from the youth group, some from Mervo, some from Frostburg. I had a chance to catch up with them a little bit earlier. Really a great, it just shows the future, and it's really good always to interact with them. So I'm honored, obviously, to be here for the inaugural Baltimore Infrastructure Summit. I've been asked to keep it a little bit short. We're running a little bit behind, so I will do that, but I do want to highlight some of the major things that we have underway in the Baltimore region. As Governor Moore always says, for this to be Maryland's decade, it must be Baltimore's as well. On the transportation side, we have many projects underway to support that. Today, I'm going to hit on a few of them. I also stress the importance of putting safety always at the forefront of everything we do. But first, let me just talk about some of the priorities of the governor and obviously for the administration and for MDOT in general. Thanks to the governor's leadership and the support of the legislature, we're able to make some smart investments across the state and here in Baltimore City. And our focus is first and foremost on the safety of everyone that uses our system and works on our system. The second will be to preserve the multi-billion-dollar investment we've made across the system. And the third is to drive economic growth. This past year, as I mentioned, the legislature did increase revenues to the department by roughly $400 million. That allowed us to bring down another $700 million annually to basically invest in infrastructure throughout the state. In terms of transit, we're making historic investments in the light rail system. As you know, the light rail system is over 30 years old, and in effect, we need to rebuild the entire system from ground up. It'll start with new vehicles, but also the rail, the power, the communications, the stations are all going to be rebuilt and redone. So it will not look anything like the light rail that we see today, but it'll look much more to the modern light rail systems you see around the globe. So that's a major one. It allowed us, with the revenues that we did get, it allowed us to pull down some major grants from the federal government, particularly to get those light rail vehicles built. So when it is complete, obviously it's going to be much better service for our customers, which is the end goal. In terms of the metro, it's in the heavy rail side. As you know, we actually have a number of vehicles that we are purchasing right now. We're starting to test those. So again, reinvesting in the infrastructure that we've had, and again, the multi-billion-dollar investments that we made, and making sure those serve our customers well. The Red Line, we continue to work on the Red Line project. The governor is very committed to obviously the east-west movement of everyone in this area. But as you can imagine, we have some challenges with the new administration. So we're going to work through those. But the commitment to build that line obviously is still there. But we also have to recognize the new environment that we're working on. So we are working with the governor and our federal partners as well on that. Turn to another major project in Baltimore City is the Frederick Douglass Tunnel. And what that means basically particularly for the Northeast Corridor and the MARC service. Again, a multi-billion-dollar project. We are working with the federal partners to look at ways that maybe we can drive the cost further down on that. But again, the commitment is there to do that so that we can have much better service, commuter rail service, and obviously the Northeast Corridor for Amtrak. Howard Street Tunnel. Moving away from transit a bit, the Port of Baltimore is a key economic engine, obviously, for the city, but also for the state. And what the Howard Street Tunnel project does, it allows us to double stack out to, in effect, the Midwest. It is a game changer for the Port of Baltimore, because that's always been our Achilles heel, is that we couldn't double stack, in effect, the cargo that comes into the Port of Baltimore, and now we will. And that project is going very well. We worked very closely with CSX, our partners there, and that's a good public-private partnership to make that happen. And one other one, clearly, that is so important to the entire region and to so many people is the Key Bridge and the tragedy. I always want to thank the mayor for his leadership and support for both, obviously, the tragedy itself and dealing with those families, but just as important is where do we help to serve the communities into the future with that bridge. So we have that bridge under, we're literally tearing down what was remaining of that, and you'll see the construction of that very shortly. You're starting to see in the media some of the things that are behind the scene that are going on. For instance, creating a wind tunnel up in Canada, so we understand what the implication will be for that bridge when it's built. We just put out a video that shows in effect, under the river bed of what we have to do out there. And basically the caissons that we're building there are larger than the Bromer Celsa Tower. So it gives you a sense of the scale of the type of work that's going on there. And let me just wrap up with the safety part of it. We've started an initiative called Serious About Safety. Last year, we lost over 500 individuals in our system, and almost a third of those were pedestrians and bicyclists. Just to put that in perspective, if you can imagine a Southwest aircraft going down every 3 months, unacceptable. But yet we accept it in our other part of our transportation system. Well, I don't accept it. The governor doesn't accept it. So we're focusing on really 3 efforts there. One is, what can we do as department in terms of policies and standards and designs? What can we do? So a lot of our complete street initiatives, for instance, deal with those types of issues. Then also we have to go back to the legislature. They were very helpful with us last year with our work zone initiative to basically slow down drivers around work zones, where we lost 6 individuals 2 years ago on the Beltway. And so we need to do more there. And then third, we need to really create partnerships at so many levels to get people to understand their personal responsibility when they're behind a vehicle, but also to build support, particularly for the legislature, to understand the complexities of this and to make some tough decisions to support some of the things that need to be done to drive that number down. I know the city's committed to 0 deaths by 2030, as we are. So with that, I just want to, again, please, anything you can do at your personal level with your friends and family, just remind them when they get behind the wheel. Unfortunately, things can go bad very quickly, so please play by all the rules and keep everyone safe. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Secretary Wiedefeld. Now I'd like to turn our attention to an important conversation. To help guide that conversation, I'm happy to bring to the stage Delegate N. Scott Phillips from District 10.
Good morning, everyone. How's everybody today? So today we are really about to enter into an important conversation. And that conversation talking about infrastructure and really talking about regionalism. So why is a Baltimore County representative from District 10 here to talk about Baltimore City infrastructure? Because it's all about the region. There is very little that happens from the standpoint of roads, energy, green energy, broadband, that doesn't have some implication for all of the jurisdictions in the area. And so I'm really honored to be here today to have this discussion with people that I have mad respect for. And so on the panel, as you see, we have Senator Dahlia Attar, representing the 41st District, West Baltimore, Park Heights, Upper Park Heights. And Dahlia has been in the legislature since 2019, and this year was elevated from the House to the Senate. Also joining us, yes, you can give a clap for Dahlia Attar. Also joining us is a person who has a kind of a little unique in our geography, and that's Senator Mary Washington, who represents District 43, who came into the legislature in the House in 2011 and then ran and won her Senate seat in 2019. But she's the only person in the Baltimore City, Baltimore County area that represents both. So please welcome Senator Mary Washington. Now the mayor and Senator Hayes just put me in the middle. I thought I was supposed to be on the end, but I'll next introduce our mayor. And this is a young man that I've watched kind of grow up through the ranks. I am so impressed with what he's been able to do over the last 4 to 5 years here in the city of Baltimore, bringing us kind of all together to rally around a number of things. Needless to say, it's all in the news about how we've reduced crime in the area. But not only that, his investment in communities has been significant, and it's beginning to show results. So to that, the St. Mary's grad, but what he really touts is the Mervo grad, Mayor Brandon Scott. And last but not least, one of my closest friends in the legislature, and while I'm a tad bit older than him, I consider him my mentor in the legislature, a guy that knows how to put money into communities, the brain behind what is called WNATA, which I'm sure he'll talk about, who came into the legislature in 2015 and then ran for office and became a senator in 2019, my friend from Frostburg State University,
Right.
Mr. Antonio Hayes.
Sure.
So there's a reality check. We're living in one of the most consequential moments for infrastructure investments in a generation. Federal dollars through bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act, as the secretary mentioned, they're flowing. But what will determine long-term success isn't just how much money we receive, it's how well we work together as a region to align priorities, share data, train a workforce, and build infrastructure that is equitable, climate resilient, and built to last. Yeah. Whether we're talking about fixing crumbling roads, modernizing transit, addressing flooding, or ensuring broadband access, none of our challenges or our solutions stop at city or county lines. That's why this conversation is so timely. Our panel brings together these regional leaders from various districts with various issues to unpack where we're succeeding, where we're falling short, and what must be done to ensure collaborative, forward-looking infrastructure strategy for Greater Baltimore. As I said, I'm honored to kick this conversation off. So, as we begin this conversation, I really want to turn to Mayor Brandon Scott. I've watched you, and I've watched you, whether it was the Francis Scott Key Bridge or other issues, bring people together, particularly in the region. Why is regionalism and collaboration so important as we talk about infrastructure-related issues?
Well, I think, can you hear me? Can y'all hear me? Mic check. I think the most important thing, Delegate, was said earlier. We will not be the best city, the best region, the best state unless Baltimore is its best. But I think when we're coming into this new way, you know better than anybody, for a long time, especially at the leadership level, the executive leadership level, you had these folks, for better or for worse, who were solely focused on their jurisdiction, right? Baltimore County, Howard County, Anne Arundel County, Baltimore City, and they never really thought about why it was important for them to be aligned and work together. I had the blessing of coming in at a time where we had no choice but to do that. But to be quite honest, with the folks that were there, County Executive Pittman, County Executive Ball, now Congressman Olszewski Jr. and myself, having all of us known and worked with each other for so many years, we were really set on talking about regionalism for many ways, but more importantly, because we know how interconnected and how we depend on each other for everything. Infrastructure is like the easiest part of that, right? But if we are going to truly have the best region, we need to have regional transportation. That's why one of the first things you saw all of us do when we were all elected in this executive position is come out and say that we have to have a regional way of thinking about transportation and a regional board for transportation, and fighting for that legislation that thankfully, thank you to the senators, that was passed through, because we understand that Baltimore is the core and everything depends on the core. If the core of the earth is not working, the rest of the world fails, right? And that's the understanding. And we have taken that to all of our work, from everything, for how we're thinking about big projects, whether it is the Key Bridge, whether it is the Highway Street Tunnel, whether it is the Red Line, whether it is how we're going to be reworking highways, whether it is the Greenway Trail, whether it is how we're going to look at MTA in the future, right? And making sure that we're all aligned and working together through things like some of the boards and things that we all sit on, but also through operation and how we work beyond the realm of infrastructure to think about that, right? Johnny and I would always talk about just simple stuff can help unlock partnerships. There used to be, and you know this, if you were on, let's just say, Reisterstown Road, sorry, Senator, there's two West Side folks, so I have to, and it's snowing, and you get above Slade Avenue. Back in the day, what would happen, right? They would pick the plow up, turn around, and go back in the county. But we changed that. Johnny and I said, no, we're gonna go at least a block in. And when you start to do things like that and you look at how we work in public safety in ways that we didn't before, because these issues impact us all, but we know for sure the infrastructure does, right? Yes, the Key Bridge, right? Just that, and I think the Secretary could probably tell you, just that little small smidget in the beginning is in the city of Baltimore.
Right.
But think about the impacts of that I see every day now of not having that bridge that impacts the city just as much, if not more, than anybody else. We have to be working together in a regional way because the region has to be strong. And in order for the region to be strong, the core, which is Baltimore City, has to be the strongest. And I'm blessed to have county executive counterparts now who understand that and work in that way.
So you say you're blessed now because of the people,
That's
the
right.
individuals that are sitting in seats. And that's concerning to me, quite frankly.
It is.
Right?
Me
So
too.
I'm going to turn to the one individual who now represents two jurisdictions in the area, and I'm going to ask you, now that you've had some experience kind of dealing in Baltimore County and Baltimore City, what silos do you see that present challenges? We talked a little bit already about where we've come together because of people. What silos do you see, Senator Washington?
Well, thank you, Delegate. And first of all, I want to thank everyone for being here on this Wednesday morning. You could be lots of places, but you're here to participate in this conversation. It's also, there are not too many people that I would come forward and be on a panel with so early. You know, we're calling this a fireside, but it's the summer, so maybe next time it's poolside. What do you think about that, since we realized we're going to change that?
It's going to be hot enough.
Do we change our attire as well? Anyway.
You know, choice, right? So I think first I want to say that we've been doing Baltimore County and Anne Arundel and Howard, we've been doing regionalism for a very long time. We just didn't do that, right? Certainly at the edges of all of our districts in the commercial areas. I represent a district that goes from North Avenue, so if you can imagine North Avenue and Greenmount Avenue, all the way up to 695. And then over a little bit to Hartford Road and then Charles Street. And so certainly people from the county, you know, venture, you know, to some of the institutions that are there, Belvedere Square, the Senator Theater, certainly in the southern parts of our city, people venture from Anne Arundel County into Canton and various other places, and then on all of the sides. You know, so, you know, we've had this concept of regionalism. We work together. There's the Baltimore Metro Council, which the mayor is a member of, particularly around the space of transportation. So also we've worked out regional arrangements when it comes to funding affordable housing. There are mechanisms for doing that. So I think we do have infrastructure, and we do have the boards. But it does matter who the people are, to the mayor's points about willing to look at all these opportunities. The silos that I see are around the communication across agencies, even within the jurisdictions. So we have our leaders speaking with each other, but we don't yet really have, I think, an opportunity for the leaders of the agencies in the different sectors. If I'm unaware of those, let me know, because if there are these on the books where the DGS leaders are able to speak with each other and work on collaborations, going into grants together, coordinating the infrastructure projects. There's certainly around transportation. I think when we're talking about things like our underground infrastructures, our water system, we're working together on the Baltimore, I think we're reactivating the Baltimore Regional Water Task Force to understand and work through those things. So I think the silo is, having been a person that has worked in state as well as city, is that we can get really focused on the job that we're doing, our single job, because it's so immense, but providing an opportunity to interact with the private sector, with people who are doing the work, who are doing the contracts, and with each other to share our experience, strength, and hope across the challenges in each would be, I think, a good opportunity. But I think that we should enjoy the fact that we do have a history of working together, and we have created the structures to do it. I think it's about a willingness to really work those programs, and to invite all of you in particular to be a part of it. As policymakers, we have an idea of how something works, right? And on paper, it might look good. But you all who actually have to get the permits, who have to order the concrete, who have to run the lines and things, can really help us better understand how our zoning laws, how our financing laws, how all of those things can really make a difference. So the silo I see is in some ways between the doers of the work and those of us who support the doers of the work.
So I'm going to throw out something.
Oh.
Yeah, you can clap on it. I've been around a long time. I'm the senior person on this panel.
I don't know about that.
No, I do. So I'm gonna ask this question. I'm gonna turn to the senator and I'm gonna put him on the spot. When we talk about regionalism and we talk about the Baltimore Metropolitan Council or regional transportation group, I often think of Baltimore and I compare it to the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. And I think about some of the things that are legislated, right? Whether it's investments in WMATA or the National Park and Planning Council. Senator Hayes.
Yeah.
We say we're working in regionalism, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that we compare to some of our other friends in the other part of Maryland.
Do a better job.
With investment, with structure, et cetera. What can we or should we do differently?
Yeah, no, I think really good point. The mayor's over here heckling me as I'm thinking about my response to this question. But, Baltimore is unique in its structure, period, right? So Baltimore is one of 3 cities in our nation that is separate and independent from any county or state government, right? And so that itself at a unique situation that we're in. Even some of the major cities like New York City is a part of a major county and they had that support. Here in Baltimore, it would make our jobs, especially as state legislators, much harder. You go from city government to the state and then the federal government, where in most places they have the cooperation of the city, the county, and then the state, then the federal government. And so I think—
Hold on, I just want to say this. We do not want county government.
Right. No, not at all. I agree. No, not that I'm just identifying the challenges that we have here, here in the city and in a city where we used to have a population that was greater than the rest of the state combined. We find ourselves with very, very unique challenges. When it comes to, organizations like what is it, BMC that you named, and others, there is collaboration and thought sharing around regionalism in the sense of some of the big things like transportation.
But what is the authority?
What's that?
What is the authority? What's the power?
Right. No, that's what I'm saying. So it's just like advisory, mostly in nature. And then I think also it's, it doesn't touch everything, right? And so I think there's been some attempts from, when I came into the legislature years ago as an intern, Baltimore was like the big fish in the room. We had 10 senators, we had 30 legislators. As our population has shifted from Baltimore City into the region, now we have, I think, 16 delegates and I hate to say 4 and 2/3 of us, but we have 5 senators here in Baltimore City. But our population.
I just want to say I belong to 2 delegates.
Right.
So it's just.
But our population has and our influence in Annapolis has really shifted dramatically. And so it's an incumbent upon us more than anything now to reach beyond our city lines and to build collaborations and stuff like that. And I think that's what the mayor talked about a little bit, the importance of reaching out, having those regional leaders be a part of the solution. But there are, to my knowledge, and, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, there's no binding authority, decision-making authority regionally that is really making things happen. But I think has been some suggestions as well as some ideas around how we go about doing that. But right now, I think that's one of the challenges we have in moving forward as a region.
So, Mr. Mayor, I know you're chomping at the bit.
I am. The senator's too nice. I could just see him thinking and processing the whole time. I think what I would say, I agree with everything that my brother senator said. I would just take it a few steps further. For example, when you think about other cities and how, we'll just use transportation for the example since the secretary's here. Perfect example. When you go to, whether you go down to WMATA or you go up to Philadelphia and SEPTA, right? And we can really use this, use the red line, for example. Mm-hmm. One person couldn't have just walked in the room with all of us, you were there, all of us, and say, I'm sending $1 billion back. Because no other, transportation authorities are regional, and it has to be approved by multiple groups of people in order to do that. The way that ours is set up is that, the governor makes the decision, right? Not even the legislature could stop that from happening, and we gave back $1 billion of federal funding. We all should be riding the red line right now, not talking about when and if we're gonna be able to build the red line. And the reality of that is that it was the outdated structure that we had that allowed that to happen. Because even if the former governor didn't like the city or didn't want this project to happen, which we know now to be true, right? It wouldn't have mattered because we would have had a better structure on how to operate. And then when you think about us now pushing, right? We're starting to move on that now to have that regional power. And then when you think about the other realities, right? For example, our most comparable city is St. Louis. If someone calls me and says what about DC? You can't compare us to DC. In fact, let me be the first to tell you that every mayor in the country will tell you what I'm about to say. No city is comparable to DC because the federal government is always going to make sure that DC has what it needs to operate because they're all there all the time. But St. Louis is the only one. And when you look at those comparisons, you see a lot of the similarities, right? You saw, and we have to be honest, we know what happened in cities. Suburbs were built on the backs of city residents. Let's be honest about that. And these folks went out and took that money. And then it's taken us a long time for the pendulum and brains to swing back around of but if we don't have these city centers, we won't be able to survive. We have to have these city centers. And now we're back at that point, and it's gonna cause a lot of pain and discomfort and being uncomfortable. But uncomfortability is what makes you your best because we're gonna have to look at systems. We're gonna look at all these things. For example, one of the big things that the senator talked about for us is the water system, right? Congressman Olszewski and I pushed to have this water task force. Our chairman, comptroller, raise your hand. The chairman of the commission is out there. Simply.
Put him on the spot.
Yeah, I got him good with
He's
that
the
one. But for the simple reality is that, I get yelled at all the time for people saying, well, the county bills and water and the rates that you guys and how this thing works. And then I have to tell them, what am I going to say, Mr. Comptroller? That I have no choice. Back in 1971, 13 years before I was born, they entered into this agreement that it would happen in this structure that makes no sense in 2025 or 24. And we have to change those in order for us to build the best region that we have. But people are going to be mad. It's
Right.
going to be some resistance, right? Because some people.
Because I don't want to pay more.
Well, you're going to have to pay more. There's no way that we can continue the investment that has to go, right? And I think what we saw out on York Road, and I happened to get a text message from the county executive saying how great DPW was and everyone works together. It's so amazing that everyone knows each other. But we have this aging infrastructure and we have to correct it. And we cannot correct 2025 problems off 1970s agreements.
Absolutely. No.
So I appreciate it. This is wonderful. Now, okay, you can clap. Okay. But I need to switch gears a little bit, and I want to speak to Senator Attar. We've got all of this stuff happening. We're talking about water. We're talking about roads. We're talking about energy. We've got all of this stuff happening. But we have a gap when it comes to workforce. And many of these folks are in the industry. How do we start dealing with the skills available to do all of this $7 billion worth of work?
Thank you, Delegate. And before I answer that question, I have to start with, because I was also jumping, I just didn't want to interrupt at the other question. One thing that we do have on a positive note, jumping back to regional and infrastructure, I haven't been around as long as some others, but in my time, I have never seen a mayor and a governor working regionally, caring about the state as a whole, and understanding that if Baltimore City isn't the greatest that it can be, then we will not have a great state. So on a positive note, we have that going for us now. Yeah. Now let's get back to your other question. So workforce is a huge problem. A couple of days ago, I was out in the streets with our mayor, and we were handing out Narcan and speaking with people, and an individual came up to us and he's like, we have people who want jobs. How do we get these jobs? It's about reaching individuals. It's about going out in the streets and saying, you need a job, let me help you through the process. So this individual was saying, people don't know how to fill out applications. He's not wrong. We have apprenticeships, things like that. For example, right here in my district on Park Heights, we have Jumpstart. That program is amazing. They're training so many people to do such good work that's going to help the entire state of Maryland, not just Baltimore City. I was sitting there, they were showing us the different techniques that they're teaching them. I don't know how these individuals are picking this up. To me, it's like a different language, it's gibberish, but they're learning it and they're learning these skills, and we need more of that. And again, I'm going to go back to, we do have a mayor and a governor who has made that a priority. And when we're training people right here, for example, in Baltimore City, it's not just about Baltimore City. People don't just train here and work here. We'd love people to train here and work here, but it's about going throughout the state. And I'm going to give one more example about it, which is, it's close to my heart. It's the Pimlico redevelopment. That's right in my district, the heart of my district. And I want to give a shout out to Senator Hayes as well. We made it a priority that they are hiring from the 21215 zip code. That's actually the zip code I live in, but it's the surrounding neighborhoods where there are so many individuals who just want the training, want to get a job, and we have opportunities. So we are making it a priority that the developers are going out there, MSA is going out there and finding individuals within that zip code who need a job and training them appropriately.
And Delegate, I think that what the Senator is saying is so important, and we really recognize the need for us. We have all these projects going on. You have Key Bridge, you got the Inner Harbor, you got the tunnels, you have what we're doing with vacants and the $3 billion vacant strategy in Baltimore. We have tons and tons of government jobs where we're gonna, like, DPW is never gonna stop working on the infrastructure of the city. And what we've been really doing is some innovative things of trying to prepare for the next group of that workforce, right? Working with places like Baltimore's Promise and Career Bound, and we really have a mandatory agency participation in that. And we've been meeting around these career tracks in CTE because, you know, I believe CTE schools are the best. There's no argument for me. You can go to college, you can go to work. If you choose to go to a school like Senator Hayes, you don't even know how to change a tire, but that's a whole different thing. But
we could build a bridge.
not build it, design it.
Design it.
And then the CTE people have to build it. But we have to take that a step further. So like we have an infrastructure academy we're doing to train not just the current workers, but the next group of city employees and other folks that we want to go off into this work, right? DGS, I know Director Attila is here. They actually are working with some CTE schools on the curriculum, right, including Mervo, to make sure that what they are learning in those tracks mean jobs. And we know that can help build a new city. And that's really what we have to do. I'm going to be cutting the ribbon on the Fleet Academy in Park Heights at the old Park Heights Elementary tomorrow, because we have to really think about infrastructure, not just in a bricks and mortar, but a people kind of way, and who's going to build those things. And I think we have to get back to that, because we know many of us, right? My family came here because leaving the South to come because of the port, because of Bethlehem still, to help build. And that's why I'm here. And we have to figure out ways to create that for this new generation as we have this historic level investment into infrastructure.
And Scott, I just want to give a shameless self-promotion for our community college. Here in Baltimore City is the only community college in the state that's a state agency. But at community college, everywhere are supposed to be those partners that has the flexibility to really help. And we have an awesome community college here, but for years they've been plagued with transitional leadership and other things. And so in comparison to our neighbors in Baltimore County, where they have a very robust community college system, we're now in a position where our community colleges finally have a level of stability. So especially given the folks in the room, as you're thinking about, outreach into employment, I see some also leaders here in the labor movement. Our community college can be the best partner in building a pipeline for employment here in the city. But for years, they've gone underutilized. But just a couple of years ago, we in the legislature working in the mayor's office restructured the board to make sure that they have representation from the mayor's office employment development, and making sure that they have industry leaders as a part of their governance structure to help inform the emergent industries that's happening here in our region.
And if I could add, Senator Attar and I serve on the Education, Energy, and Environment Committee. And from a policy perspective and sort of a practical perspective, we manage, or we set the policy, for the certifications for all of the occupations except the healthcare occupations. Senator Hayes, they do that.
Unfortunately.
But I think that making your point about making the connections and making clear what the pipeline is, or what the career ladder is, and not just the training, because we do know that there are entities that are in the business of training, and again, we created incentive for that. But I think that there are also trainers that also do the placement. So you do a training, and then there's actually a placement. So you all are placements, right? We have what we call, a problematic term, but apprenticeships. But we do have this, essentially, if you think of it as on-the-job training, old school on-the-job training. So making those connections between, people who want to work and the actual certifications and training. So I'm sure not all of you know about being able to be a site, being able to offer the trainings that people need. I do think we could reframe. There is not a deficit here. We have a workforce connection problem, it seems. We have people who are trained, who are able to do the work. I think it's about you all coming to know those people, coming to know the young people that are graduating from our high schools, coming to know the parents of those people that maybe they didn't graduate from high school, but they got a GED. Our library system legislatively is a part of the job training network. Baltimore County's library system does a very good job at facilitating that. We could work more with our libraries to make those connections, because they are the places where people are going to get the support, so making those connections.
And if I can jump in very quickly again, because we're talking about college a lot, and that was mentioned a lot. I think it's very important to us remember that there are a lot of individuals who that is not the right path. I'm one of 6 children, and only 2 of us went to college, and everyone else is doing just fine because they found their own path. But we need the workforce out there to be encouraging that, you know what, if college isn't the right path, that's fine. Let's train you appropriately without going down that route. There are so many individuals that I know also who go to college because they're told that's what I'm supposed to do, and then they're stuck with student loans and no job afterwards. So we need to keep that in mind, that yes, college is very important for a lot of things. I'm an attorney. I wouldn't become an attorney without going to college. But there are many jobs.
University of Maryland Law School.
Yes, but there are many jobs. Look at the mayor's mistake you said. It is in Baltimore. There are many jobs that, high-paying jobs that you do not need to go to college for.
And universities are making that transition and need to make that transition from the model of simply a 4-year academic institute, a degree, for that entity. That's one of our largest industries, as a matter of fact, that provides a lot of infrastructure and jobs, are the building that's happening on our colleges and universities. It's important that they do succeed in that they adapt to that model, that they incorporate and partner with our community colleges for individuals that are getting initial certifications but maybe need additional college, or there's open studies, there's night school at colleges, and it doesn't necessarily lead to a degree, but the critical thinking skills, the discernment, the ability to do research, the ability to evaluate and to measure, those are higher order learnings that one does tend to learn at the associate's level and the college level. And so making those connections, but not necessarily grounding it, as you say, in getting a college degree, we can think about these institutions as institutions of higher learning, of going forward.
So I would be remiss. We're going to switch again, because I know the mayor's got to get out of here. But I can't not address this issue. Over the course of the last 50 years, we have seen a significant increase in temperatures, right? I think the statistic is we now have 40% more days over 90 than 50 years ago here in our region. So this is an energy and a resilience question. This is a question about green energy. This is a question about an administration that doesn't believe in global warming. What do we do? And I'm going to turn to you, Mr. Mayor, right? Because this is a real issue we got flooding, we got heat indexes, crazy. What are we doing in that area? And how do we leverage green energy to grow our economy?
Yeah, I think that, first and foremost, we have to remind people that this is real, right? It's literally going to be 101 degrees on Friday, which means it's going to be like 115. Only Senator Tarr is the only person excited about that. She likes it when it's hot. But
I'm sitting up here freezing right now.
But I think that we have to, and I think both you and Senator Hayes were there last night, and we have to acknowledge the reality, exactly what the governor said last night. The federal government's not going to help in this.
No.
It's just not. So we have to take that responsibility at the local and the state level to focus on that. For us in the city, the Department of Planning really requires us, especially as we're doing new builds and all of these things, remodeling, to do that. When you think about things like Harbor Point in the peninsula, yes, they may be waterfront, but they are built in a way to resist sea level rise and the impacts of climate change, right? Even with the way that DGS is working out to make sure that we are having more electric vehicles and doing things like that, and more energy efficient buildings and all of the things that we need, but also in other things that we do in our neighborhoods, especially those neighborhoods that have extreme heat islands, right? That's one of the reasons why we increase funding for hubs, the housing upgrades to benefit seniors, so that we're getting air conditioning and all of these things in these homes for these seniors, because we know that it is hotter and we cannot have them be out. All of those things from an infrastructure point of view really matters if we're dealing with that. In the way that we're building, when you see some of the projects that we're doing, we have the one on Middle Branch to help deal with that, right? We have to build the infrastructure itself to deal with the reality that we're seeing, not just the heat, the storms, right? When you think about a regular thunderstorm here in Baltimore today in 2025, it's not the same thunderstorm from 5 years ago, let alone 10 or 15, right? Literally, whenever we're having big storms come in, there are roads that immediately I've directed the emergency management team to close, right? Like North Point Road is going to close. We're going to close parts of Frederick, Hillen Road by Merville, right? All of these things are going to close because literally every time it rains, it floods. And people still drive around the barriers and get stuck. That's a whole different conversation. But we have to build that infrastructure, and we're working. I know, for example, on Hillen Road, we've been working to get those funds working with the federal government, EPA, all those folks, to build that infrastructure for what we know exists today. But we cannot wait for anyone else to do it. We know we have it at least a few more years of not having big help from the federal government on that.
So to my finance man at the end, where do we find the money to do these things? And, oh, by the way, we talk about air conditioning and we talk about all those things. That's just more of a strain on our infrastructure, particularly our energy infrastructure. So how do we creatively figure out how to manage through the next 4 years and finance some of these challenges?
Yeah, I think especially as a state, we found more creative ways to, whether it's organizations through Medco, who's doing public-private partnerships, or some of the things that we've done through Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development, where the state is providing gap subsidy for a lot of projects as it relates to residential development. A couple of years ago, I had a piece of legislation called the appraisal gap for historically redlined communities. Obviously, talking about redlining is real controversial, so they found a really generic name for it and they called the program Uplift. But in Uplift, in here in Baltimore, where you have, where it's the birthplace of redlining, and you go to develop some of these vacant houses, the market will not, and the financial institutions won't lend to you for the amount that's needed to rehab these houses. And so it's incumbent upon us and state government to fill in that gap. And on North Avenue, you could easily get a house for $10,000, right? But it's going to cost you $150,000 minimum to renovate it and bring it up to speed. And so, if the market will only give you and bear out that you could sell that home for $85,000, the economics doesn't make sense, right? And so I think when there's opportunities where there can be partnerships between public-private partnerships, and I think you see a lot of that as it relates to Pimlico. You named the various projects, Frederick Douglass Railroad, but I think we're going to be limited in how much we're able to depend on the federal government. Shameless plug, after this, I know there's going to be some breakouts. In room 337, we added someone new to the agenda that wasn't already on the agenda. We have a gentleman that's coming who advised us as state legislators on various things that's happening in DC. I know Adam's going to be there talking about the Ann Arbor, but if you get a chance, Jonathan has come down and is going to give us an update on what he's seeing and what the landscape looks like. He's coming from us by way of New Deal, and they're a think tank organization that help inform state legislators on things that's happening in the federal government and the impact that it may have on local and state jurisdictions. So if you get a chance after this, stop by 337 to learn more.
So if I could just, I know we have to transition, but I think one of the things we have to do when we're addressing the impacts of a changing climate I serve, it's the state of Maryland, Virginia, and Pennsylvania, 20 years ago, long time ago, formed the Chesapeake Bay Commission. And with the concept, understanding of our joint interests, in the health of the Bay. And so there was a very sort of targeted focus on the Bay and clean water and focus on TMDLs and things like that. And so now, however, we need to expand our concept of sort of what infrastructure is. So we have waterways that are part of the infrastructure. They are also part of the planet of nature adapting to or being a way for us to adapt to increasing heat. So if we think about an infrastructure project, could be planting more trees, which the legislature has provided money for. But there are roads and streams and communities that need to be rebuilt to adapt. So I think that from an infrastructure and from what the people in this room might be interested in thinking about, we're going to do all we can to sort of mitigate the harms, and some of those mitigations are some of those permits and requirements that some of you all don't like, but they are there, particularly when it comes to flooding, because no one wants there to be property damage. No one wants something to wash away. So the extent to which you are able to partner, with shoring up the natural environment, right? From the impacts of the built environment. Like we want to build, we want to develop, but we have to understand that the price of developing in some places has been reducing the ability of our communities to manage the changes, in the environment. So us coming together as partners around some of these policies and understand that it's in our global interests, not just business against local government, et cetera, but truly residents of Maryland, homeowners of Maryland, parents, wanting to have a world in which our children can breathe the air and not have to live just in air-conditioned silos. I watch a lot of those movies, so. But we can partner in that, and so there is building. So we have to rebuild the natural environment, and we have to mitigate and adapt the built environment to the changes in the natural environment. And I think that's our
Very well
challenge
said.
and our opportunity. Yeah.
Very well said. All right, we're going to do a little bit of a wrap-up.
Uh-oh.
And I'm going to ask you, looking ahead, what will define regional success over the course of the next 5 to 10 years? And what do you see as the challenges? And what's the hope? And I'm going to start all the way to my right with Senator Otard.
Thank you, Delegate. So what I believe is most important when we're thinking about the future.
And I should say 60 seconds, everybody.
60 seconds. What's most important when thinking about the future is thinking about all of our needs. So for example, we didn't bring up the issue of childcare. We heard about transportation to get someone. We have individuals in Baltimore City, for example, who can't take a job because they can't get there, or someone from a different part of Maryland who can't take a job because they can't get there. There are also a lot of individuals who can't take a job because they can't afford childcare, or they can't find childcare. So we have to look at, when you asked me before about the workforce and how do we get people in the workforce, we need all the services to come together in order for us to build a future that's bright for everybody. So I guess in 5 more seconds, I'm going to say we really need to all work together in all sides of it. I look at it in Annapolis, we have all different committees, we all work on different subjects, but they all need to be brought together because that's how we make a good society.
Senator?
I think success for this regionalism, for this conference might be thinking about some of the things that we said, some of the things that you're going to hear, and come out with an actual action plan. And certainly, I represent both the city and the county and participate in various regional activities here for us to take on some difficult conversations and to recognize our joint interests. And so I think a very specific would be something that comes out of this conference that commits to working together as a region.
All right. Senator Hayes?
Yeah. No, I think much of which was said already, but I think the success, what is coming before us, Baltimore is probably the last East Coast city that's been underdeveloped. With the mayor's BVIR, the investments that we and the governor has made into housing opportunities, I think we have a huge potential to grow Baltimore and grow its opportunities through infrastructure here in the city. What we're doing on West North Avenue has been remarkable to see. We've invested over $50 million in the last 3 years, really, creating opportunities where people, we have more interest in developing and converting vacant properties into usable assets than we actually have resources. And so I see a future where Baltimore continues to grow and rebuild, and all of the things that we've done up until this point and working together as city, state, and in the region has led to that. And so I think the best days are ahead of us.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I think that when you think about the region and infrastructure success, I'll just start with some things that are obvious. I agree wholeheartedly with the senator that we should be in full swing of our $3 billion 15-year vacant strategy to end vacants. And with the partnership that we have with the city, with the state, with the business, and the actual community, we should be well into that work. But we have to build a new Key Bridge, right? that has to actually happen. Yeah. We have to build a red line. We have to make sure that the Frederick Douglass Tunnel happens because that train, those train rides from Baltimore to DC happening at 25, 27 minutes will be life-changing, because then many of our brothers and sisters in DC who are tired of being priced out, who may want to actually live in a chocolate city, not a latte city, might decide to move to Baltimore. I'll wait for my text from Muriel later today. But that is a big deal for us. But also we know what's happening with the Howard Street Tunnel, right? The rebuilding and renovation of Penn Station. When you're talking about all of that infrastructure work, it all connects to each other. When you have a faster train that can get you to some of the best and most important jobs in the world, and then you have housing and housing stock that is increasingly being renovated and changed, because if you were talking to me 5 years ago, right? And I told you, delegate, that we were selling houses on Harlem and Emerson for $300,000, you would laugh at me, right? But that's happening today, and we need that to happen in this organic way that understands the culture and the history of Baltimore City, and that does not allow us to forget what was done to places like West and East Baltimore in the home and birthplace of redlining, and making sure that those projects happen, not just to our communities, but with our communities is the most important part.
Thank you. Thank you all. I'm going to just say a couple of words. First, this has been an honor for me to be able to moderate this panel. And somebody asked me, how did you get this job? I kind of asked for it.
There you go.
When I saw this, I thought, you know what? As a guy that first started out in Baltimore City, moved to Baltimore County, and have been all around the state of Maryland, water doesn't stop at a county-city line.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Roads don't stop at a county-city line.
True.
Energy lines don't stop at a county-city line.
Yeah.
Over 60% of the folks in the 7 jurisdictions around here commute from one jurisdiction to another every day just to go to work. Mm-hmm. It is important for us to have these conversations and focus on this in the region. Baltimore City is the hub. Everybody else, we're the spokes, but a wheel doesn't turn without the hub and the spokes. Yeah. So I'm honored today to be a participant in this, and I thank you all very, very much. And I hope you all have gotten something out of this conversation. Thank you.
Indeed.
Good afternoon, everyone. I know you guys can continue eating lunch, but I'm excited to welcome you back and introduce our luncheon keynote speaker. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Vaki Mawema, Managing Director and Principal at Gensler, where he co-leads the Baltimore office. Vaki is a mentor, a coach, and a connector, helping shape Gensler's global network and driving a culture grounded in creativity, leadership, and design excellence. His impact on Baltimore is very clear. He has led teams on some of the city's most significant projects: the reimagination of Harbor Place, the M&T Bank Stadium renovation, the T. Rowe Price headquarters, the Penn Station expansion, and Under Armour's global headquarters. He also serves as the chair of Urban Land Institute's Placemaking Product Council, co-chair of Gensler's Global Race and Diversity Committee, leading work to address racism in the design industry. Vaki has been recognized by the Baltimore Business Journal as a leader in diversity and by the Washington Business Journal as a 40 under 40 honoree. As a public speaker, he brings passion for creative leadership, teamwork, and unlocking the full potential of people through purpose. Please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker.
Wow, that's a lot of people. Are you guys all involved in infrastructure, all of you? It's a wonder the state hasn't just like come to a halt or something, because everybody seems to be here. Well, it's wonderful to be here, and I really want to start by expressing my thanks to the entire organizing team from the Mayor's Office of Infrastructure Development for inviting me here. After 7 years of living and working and raising a family here in Baltimore, I hope it's okay with you if I refer to Baltimore and Maryland as my home. I certainly feel that way, and I must say that during my time here, I've been warmly welcomed by many of you. I recognize so many faces in the room. And I've built so many meaningful relationships and friendships. And I've gotten to work in what I believe has been the very important and worthwhile work of building a better Maryland. As you guys know, my particular industry, which is design, is closely linked to yours. And I hope that even in this forum here today, I will be welcomed as a friend and not as a stranger. So among the many things that we do have in common, and that do bind us together, of course, is our shared belief that here in Baltimore and in Maryland, we ought to be in one of the most livable places in America. We should have the choice to utilize reliable and well-connected mass transit. In fact, we should have the choice to utilize a variety of modes of transportation. We should have beautiful, walkable, safe neighborhoods. I'm sure you agree with that. We should enjoy our public spaces and the resources that they bring for their recreational, rejuvenating, and communal qualities, all stewarded by us, its citizens. And of course, highly functional, well-coordinated governments at all levels. Wouldn't you agree with that? Okay. So, speaking of government, I suppose it wouldn't be stretching the truth to say that the various communities that are represented here today, from city to counties to state and federal, might from time to time find themselves a little bit out of sync with one another, right? That happens. After all, they have different areas of focus and different short and long-term objectives with different priorities and different timelines. So, considering the times that we're in, I think it has never been more important for us to work even harder to find the common ground that sets us all up for success. Now, I'm no expert in the field of infrastructure, but speaking from my experience, I've learned this, that of all the attributes that any professional could have, leadership is the most important. This summit, if it is to be a success, it calls for all of you, all of us, to put into collaborative work the sort of inspired and creative leadership that I believe we need right now, especially if we want to make a meaningful difference, even in these challenging times. As I was preparing for this talk, I was thinking about what I'd come and speak to you about today. And my first inclination was to learn as much as I could about infrastructure, right? And then maybe try to impress you with my ideas about how to deliver great infrastructure projects, and maybe in the process even offer an opinion or two about some current initiatives. But, as I've said, it's an area in which my limited knowledge would likely have resulted in a speech lacking in profundity and impact. So instead, I'd like to use the next few minutes to emphasize the significance of this summit and remind you of the incredible potential of an occasion such as this, where brilliant minds come together for a singularly powerful purpose. And to illustrate that, to illustrate the potential, I'd like to draw a parallel with an abbreviated story about the founding of a small African country, as experienced by a handful of leaders who exhibited certain traits that I believe all of us in this room need to embody if we're serious about taking this state's infrastructural future forward. And I call these traits the 5 I's of design. The 5 I's of collective leadership. Number 1, intention. The man on the far left of this image is my late father. His name was Michael Mwema, and the year was 1965. And he's seen here as a prisoner at Sikombela restriction camp, located in a remote and desolate part of the country known at the time as Rhodesia in southern Africa. Now, the prison was so far removed from humanity that most of the people who ended up there were never seen or heard from again. You see, back in those days, apartheid was a reality in many parts of Africa, not just South Africa. And it was commonplace to hear of political activists such as my dad being beaten, being imprisoned, or worse. And it was under these conditions that he and his colleagues toiled to ignite the flame of independence in Rhodesia. You can just imagine the kinds of difficulties they would have experienced, can't you? Their public rallies and their protests, along with their efforts to educate and politicize black Rhodesians, had gotten them into some serious trouble. And they had each been rounded up, tortured, tried, and given harsh sentences. Little did they know that as they posed for that photograph right there, that they would, in the future, come to be known among the founding fathers of the country that you and I know today as Zimbabwe. These men were driven by a singular purpose: to remove the yoke of colonialism that had plagued their homeland and to live in freedom. A powerful idea whose intention could not possibly be confused. Now, I don't recommend regime change as a pastime for anyone, but I do recommend that we use a forum such as this today to clarify our purpose, to set the direction of travel for all of our collaborations and to do it with intention. Because that's actually how to lead people, and that is how to get things done. Clarity about what we mean to achieve and what success looks like is the first and perhaps the most important leadership quality when taking on any endeavor. Without that clarity, the outcomes remain open to endless dilution. They're often vulnerable to the fog of bureaucracy, and their failure to be accomplished is left open to excuses. So what then is our intention here today? In a state where we have a significant projected budget deficit, tepid economic growth, a relationship with the federal government that has left our state vulnerable to federal policy shifts, driving the need to accelerate and diversify our economy, all of this and more in the form of challenges. Our intention surely must be to collaborate as a regional team with the purpose of outlining plans and strategies for infrastructure that move this state and city forward. To set goals and targets for delivering world-class infrastructure in Maryland. To align on the most essential projects and priorities that will set the stage and the baseline for Maryland to grow towards greater self-sufficiency and resilient economic strength. To learn from each other by sharing those many examples that we've been speaking about in small groups, examples of innovation and working synergy, and to put those ideas to work starting now. And finally, surely we must attempt to establish a collaborative standard, a new collaborative standard for which this state can be known. Number two, imagination. Everything that man has created, man has first imagined. Believe it or not, that the existence of Rhodesia as a country was the brainchild of one man, and his name was Cecil John Rhodes, a man who imagined controlling all of Africa and its wealth as a testament to the power of the British Empire. And on his way to achieving his vision, he created a colony, Rhodesia, which of course he conveniently named after himself. His business, gold and then eventually diamond mining, had created unimaginable wealth, and he could be counted at one point as being among the richest men in the world. By coercion and by military force, he had conquered the indigenous kingdoms of southern Africa, and he had put plans into place to establish a privately owned corridor of inexhaustible resources connected by rail and stretching from Cape to Cairo. For those of you in the room who are familiar with that phrase, Cape to Cairo, that's where it comes from. So when these 8 defiant men dared to imagine a different future, one that had self-determining Africans at the helm, you can just imagine that it came as quite a shock to the entrenched colonial system. But their message of freedom captured the imagination of an entire people. And it created a movement so significant that it eventually converted that imagined vision into reality. My dad would tell me stories about his time in detention, how he and his fellow detainees would speak about the future as though it was the present. And in their vision, their country had black and white leaders in business, as captains of industry, professionals, and academics. Children of all races played together openly, and the country was a place of joy, not dissatisfaction and conflict. He said that every now and again someone in the group would step up and poo-poo the idea of all this future talk, but there was almost always somebody else who insisted on these visualization exercises, and these did a lot to help everybody keep faith. Let's see if you recognize these words. Envision with me, if you will, a new Inner Harbor area where the imagination of man can take advantage of a rare gift of nature to produce an enthralling panorama of office buildings, parks, high-rise apartments, and marinas. In this, we have a very special opportunity. For few other cities in the world have been as blessed as has ours with such a potentially beautiful harbor area within the very heart of downtown. Too visionary, this? Too dreamlike? Certainly not. Who recognizes those words? Those were the words spoken by Theodore McKeldin during his second inaugural address as he assumed the office of mayor of Baltimore on May 21st, 1963. With that powerful statement began a series of events, backed by committed partnership, collaboration, and hard work that brought into being a reimagined waterfront right here in this city that would go on to become the envy of cities the world over. His vision continues to become a reality. And with the work of transforming our inner harbor continues today. And with your help, and with the help of the people of Baltimore and Maryland, we will deliver the full measure of Mayor McKeldin's vision. Of course, it'll take hard work. It'll take more partnership, and it'll take more determination to complete the tremendous tasks of realigning streets as significant as Pratt Street and Light Street, delivering mass transit, enhancing the promenade, and creating the entirely new park at Freedom's Port, in addition to delivering housing, retail, office space, and entertainment to the Inner Harbor. But we will do it. You see, the challenge of the future has always been and will always be our ability to imagine it. How transformative. How ambitious. Some of you might have heard boxers who say you can't hit what you can't see. I like to say you can't have what you can't first imagine. Because the extent to which we can imagine is the extent to which we can transform. And we're not the first city in America to face challenges of this nature. There are plenty of cities in the country that have turned themselves around to come back from what might have seemed impossible challenges. Cities like Detroit, cities like Cleveland, even Washington, D.C. They show us, among many other things, that for those who dare to imagine, to work together, to create, the rewards of a better future will always await. So when you hear people say, the idea is too big, it's too fancy, it looks too expensive, it's because they are conditioned to constrain their imaginations into accepting that what presently is will always be. But let us in this room agree that what presently is but a moment along the way of what will become. So our challenge is always to be asking, how much further can we take this city? How much more can we do as teams? Our job at this conference is to focus on what can be, and then to start making real plans for its accomplishment. Number 3, initiative. When my dad and his colleagues heard of the huge global outcry that started to take shape as a result of their harsh sentencing, they knew that they had found a source of power. Power over their oppressors, but they knew they had to keep going. They had touched a nerve of frustration at the oppressive conditions under which Africans had been living in their own country. And on finding themselves locked up, some on death row, some serving life sentences, surely some would have asked, what have we done? They probably felt in way over their heads, out of control and unsure about the future. You can imagine that fear would have crept in, perhaps even momentary regret. But they got back to work and they kept going. In the meantime, the settler government had declared itself unilaterally independent from its mother country, Great Britain, for the purpose of being able to practice apartheid without international sanction and to entrench themselves in the nation's wealth for all time to come. But after just a few years, it was the settler government that was under immense pressure, this time from public sentiment and from international scrutiny. Without their full knowledge, the conditions outside of the walls of their prison had begun to change, and partners and collaborators of all sorts began to appear. The collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge last year was a tragedy. Lives were lost, families were devastated, and our collective community was left in shock so extreme that we are still reeling from it today. Our hearts and our prayers go out to the families, the friends, and the colleagues of those that were lost. This was more than a tragedy. This event took out of active service a huge piece, a critically huge piece of Maryland's infrastructure that was vital to our economy and to our way of life. In the face of such devastation, we didn't wait to act. While some outsiders feared the worst for our state, given the significant economic impact that we were faced with, we came together as one community, and under the leadership of Governor Moore and Mayor Scott, we went to work. As we started to move in that direction of recovery, partners from the public and private sectors, from within the United States and beyond, began to appear, pledging their support and pledging their resources. Today, we have a clear path, not only to replace the old bridge, but to significantly increase the transformative impact to Maryland with the construction of the new. See, leadership takes the initiative to get going. Without always knowing how an idea will eventually be realized, leaders act, they move, creating and shaping conditions as they go, knowing and trusting that the arc of reward will eventually bend in their favor. See, there will always be temporary setbacks such as the ones we are experiencing today, but the key word in what I've said is progressive. One goal gets achieved and another one is created. The secret is to get going and to keep going. So in your roles as leaders of teams and as creators in your own rights, you must demand from everybody in your orbit and at this conference progress. Even if you're momentarily unsure about the eventual outcomes, understand that people follow men and women of action. So take full advantage of this opportunity and of this forum, and let's get going. Number 4, inclusion. These men knew that the future that they dreamed of for their country required them to know things as sophisticated as politics and world affairs, economics, and the law. But they didn't know these things. So, from their prison cells, they began to take a variety of degrees by correspondence. They would spend their days sharing that information, expanding their collective knowledge and pushing each other to grow, and grow they did. They built a diverse and balanced curriculum, with each of them one day being a student, another day being a professor. each of them leaning into their strengths. Teamwork. Among these men, leaders were surely necessary to shape the overall direction, to align efforts, to satiate interests, and to even stroke egos, but to keep everybody moving, even in the midst of an uncertain future for themselves. Inclusion is about a lot more than just getting people involved and giving them a voice. It's about finding ways and means to get everybody present to give you their best. And that is their best ideas and their best efforts. And that's a big part of why we're in this room. So inclusive leadership seeks to draw out from each other those contributions that just might make the difference. It functions like this. On the one hand, it challenges everybody in the team to create freely, with freedom, and to innovate. Give us your ideas. And on the other hand, it challenges the leaders among them to constantly be establishing a working synergy across the team. And the value is placed on finding better, more efficient, more relevant solutions to achieve their goals. And here's the thing with inclusive leadership: it brings energy and it brings purpose to everybody involved. This was the case with the development of Downtown Rise, Baltimore's 10-year vision to bring downtown back. We were very, very honored to have been involved, particularly with the strategic master planning components, where under the leadership of Baltimore City's Department of Planning and the Governor's Office, a broad group of stakeholders from the public and private sectors and from the community at large were brought together to discuss what we need to do to kick downtown, which was, by the way, already Baltimore's fastest growing neighborhood, into high gear after years of decline. And the result was a plan that focuses on 4 key areas: economic and community development, arts, entertainment, and culture, public safety, cleanliness, and of course, infrastructure development. The process leading up to the publication of the plan was inclusive. It was participatory and it was focused. I left the experience feeling very, very energized and more hopeful than ever. Not only that we would eventually bring downtown back, but also by the level of cooperation and shared desire that characterizes the moment that we are presently in. So, I want to encourage you to be inclusive in your deliberations, because the infrastructural issues of our city and state cannot be solved by just an anointed few. It requires the engagement and contributions of everybody who is here today. Number 5, inspiration. My dad was 37 years old in this photograph, younger there than I am now. And looking at him and the other young men in that picture, I am reminded of the immense power that we all possess to create and achieve extraordinary things. This is what fires me up every day. The idea that when we get together like this and we focus on building something that is worthy of our collective effort, when we do it inclusively, with direction, and with purpose, the possibilities for achievement expand even beyond our preconceived notions. And until I understood my dad's story, I had never known anybody that had lived their life with a sense of purpose. But from that day until this, I've come to understand what a sense of purpose can do, not just for one who has one, but for those he and she can impact because of it. I learned that there's no dream too big, not even the dream of freedom. All right, the story of these 8 men ends well, you're probably wondering. They were all eventually released, and many got to experience life in a free Zimbabwe, as millions of other people have done since independence in 1980. My dad could never have predicted how things would turn out as he languished in that African prison in 1965. But he did stay the course. He persisted. And today, his memory is cherished and celebrated by generations of a grateful nation. There will always be room in this world for imaginative people who lead with courage and determination and with purpose, because they inspire us. And through their achievements and through their humanity, we see our own potential to make a difference. They cause us to look in the mirror and say to ourselves with belief that we can do more. Because of people like my father, I am here today, and I am free. So you see, I am the personification of his impact. His 5 eyes are the foundation of mine. And through my achievements and through my accomplishment, I multiply the impact of his. This is the power of inspirational leadership. We're in a difficult period here in Maryland, and we have challenges in all directions. But our leaders have established this summit because, like Mayor McKeldin back in 1963, they still envision the future where our infrastructure is fully developed, laying the foundation for a booming economy and a more efficient, safe, and sustainable way of life. You were invited here as professionals familiar with the subject of infrastructure. But you are much more than that. You are leaders entrusted by the people to shape the future of our state. And you are asked to use your talent and your resources to create synergy across the various governments and the entities that are present, and to effectively change the way public sector work gets delivered in Maryland and move us forward, despite the conditions. This is the impact that we need and we expect from you, and this is why you are here. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for having me here, and I wish everybody continued success for the remainder of this summit. Thank you all very much.